Hey everybody, this is Robert from the Merit Web Project, April 28th, 2017. And I've got another John Doe up for you. Another fabricated set of results, but realistically nonetheless. And as I pull these in when we're doing education on particular sections, we're going to start at the top every time, because the PSA is such an extraordinarily complex and powerful tool. It's important for you to see different sets of results, and I'm more and more convinced what I'm going to do when I'm done here is go through just one set of results after another. You may have to go back and rework some of the other videos that I've done here. Every last one of them has some value. I know I ramble sometimes, but really even the ramblings might help you. I'm just going to mention stuff as I see it. Okay, as I look through this as the expert who has written a book, got a doctorate based on this concept right here, the PSA. I look at cluster A, and I see nothingness. Okay, we got a maladaptation of 5, but really, wow, there's nothing going on here. And when we look at this whole thing, we have 2 maladaptations at 5, and that's it. No more maladaptations here at all. Maladaptations really are below 100. You get somebody close here, no real big deal. You got 105 here, 105 here. Stop at this screen, at this graph. This graph is so important to just take apart. What do we see? We see optimal histrionic. We see a construct of 107 for the histrionic. This person's got a histrionic tendency. Oh, wow, 114 for a borderline construct. 112 for a narcissistic construct. I just named almost all of the B's except for antisocial, which they opted out of. But look at this cluster of B's. And I think I need to produce a video or videos for each of the clusters and discuss clusters. We'll deal with clusters before this is all over. We'll have a set of cluster results. Really, it's the B class here. It's cluster B. That's what we're talking about. And when we look at these numbers down here, it kind of reflects that. No, the person didn't throw a cluster B. They didn't score there significantly. But cluster B is what you're looking at. And realize that. And realize this. We're not talking about a crisis. But we're talking about a situation. You need to understand what cluster B is. Don't try to counsel this person for cluster B throws because they're not there. But they are there in their head. And if the world comes to a high boil, they're probably going to throw a cluster B. If their world breaks down, they're going to cluster B. You got a 101 here. You got a 96 here. Get the 108 here. And when you go back up and you look, everybody's involved right here except for antisocial. And the way that antisocial looks, he ain't never going to conform to this. Borderline, histrionic, narcissistic, ain't no antisocial ever going to happen here. Stare at this. Think about it. Muse over it. We'll talk about counseling techniques, I think, related to PSA somewhere down the line here. I'm not sure exactly where, but I think we will get into that because this is such a new concept in this whole area of especially the kind of people who use the Merit Web Project. This is really, really powerful stuff. It is so powerful that I, as the creator of it, can spend hours staring at this stuff. All right, so let's move on here. And again, we're looking at this screen. Wow, is this screen so powerful. It is so absolutely powerful. And we're still just in the recap and summary phases. I'm going to get to the optimal functioning stuff today. Look at the right hand. This is your crisis. This will be on the test. The breach number here is 105. Maladaptation becomes significant at 105. You have two 105s here. Now yellow is obviously a lesser value. Pink, red, dark red, those are all far more significant. Two 105 scores, virtually nothingness here. Really, when it all comes down to it, they miss by. If this was a 104, you wouldn't see yellow. If this was a 104, you wouldn't see yellow. Sitting on the fence here with maladaptations. When you follow that across to optimal, adjusted, to construct for this particular area, you end up with a whiteout. In my opinion, as I look at this, if this were my case, this right here is a fluke. Let it go. Well, the borderline on the other hand, you got 114 over here. Construct is the foundation. It's optimal, it's maladaptation, both put together. 1 + 1 = 2. If it's optimal, if it's maladaptation, actually, first of all, that gets tagged. If the maladaptation is not there and the optimal is there, that gets tagged. This person has a narcissistic and a borderline construct. That's the base of the personality. Also, the stuff is fluff. And when you follow this borderline, which I just said, they've got a borderline narcissistic base. When you follow this borderline across, he scores here. He scores here. Why doesn't he score 120 here? Because he's not in crisis yet. The bomb can go off in this borderline situation right here. Okay, that's the summary. Again, the summary statement scored significantly in 6 areas, 2 maladaptations, 4 constructs. A couple of those constructs were nothing burgers as far as I'm concerned. The big deal right here is this. That's the big deal. That's what I'm looking at. I'm also looking at this. Borderline narcissistic, not good. Borderline narcissistic, never good. Potentially under stress, it can create a significant problem. Need to get down past this. I hope you understand this. We'll do some more interpretation later. We're going to go to the optimal for about 5 minutes max, and that's it. Let's look at these 2 paragraphs. Optimal functioning scores are those scores that are a result of the client choosing the most favorable personality items from the PSA. Opposing those scores are the matching maladaptive scores. Remember, you've got optimal scores 1 through 11 and maladaptive scores 12 through 22 for antisocial. That continues to break down throughout the entire test, although each of the 10 personalities has their own set of numerical values. So they're not always 11, or obviously we have a lot more questions here. Some are 8, some are 10, some are 6, some are whatever. But you always have a corresponding item for the optimal versus maladaptive. There are 2 optimal functioning scores. You see, optimal raw, optimal adjusted. The first is the raw score, indicating that John has chosen the favorable item. Antisocial 1 through 11 is the optimal functioning score that we're talking about here. The person has chosen that item. Regardless of anything else, they have chosen that item, an optimal item, from an optimal scoring personality group. Number 2, the adjusted score subtracts the opposing maladaptive score if it was chosen, because that presents an unrealistic choice. Let's just break this down to one item. Optimal item is number 1 on the test. Item number 1 is antisocial. Item number 1, group number 1, category number 1, whatever you want to call it. Number 12 is item number 1 for maladaptation. If a person selects number 5, highest score they can, for Number 12. They've said, I have a maladaptive tendency to the extreme for this item. Now, on item number 1, which is the match for number 12. If they say, yeah, all that too, it doesn't make any sense. My favorite color, number 5, is green. My favorite color, to the point of saying number 5, is blue. Well, something doesn't match here. You can't have both to the extreme. One negates the other. It's indicative of someone trying to favor themselves. It's indicative of someone who does not know themselves. It's indicative of someone who doesn't understand the severity of their negative choice in the maladaptation, and the fact that it cannot coexist to the degree of 5 with the other option. These scores are all standardized, so things might look a little funny when we get down to the brass tacks here in the end. I gotta close this out before YouTube blows it up with too big of a file. The greater the difference between the raw score and the adjusted score reveals discrepancy between John's choices. The discrepancy score shows the percentage of difference. Percentage of difference. This is a percentage score between the optimal score and the optimal score minus the maladaptations for each of the items individually. Item 1, item 12, item 2, item 13, and so on down the line. I'm going to have to start with this again and look at these scores. So for now, I'm just going to close this out. It's the best thing I can do. And then we'll come back and we'll look at these numbers in number 7.